Hey guys, my name is Ravish and welcome back to another video in the series of Let's Talk DevOps. Now, in today's video, we are going to talk about very important topic that you need to know whenever you go for an interview or if you are a fresher that who is about to join an organization. All right. So the topic of today is tech stack in any IT organization. Now, why do you need to know this? That what is the tech stack in any IT organization? So even if you are a fresher or even if you are someone who is into software industry since 2 3 years, you're going to ask this question to the recruiter that what is the tech stack that is used in in this organization, because every organization has its own tech stack and it might or might not overlap with the current tech stack that you are working upon. All right. So when and in the case when you are a fresher, then and you have not worked a lot on DevOps, and even if you are someone who is coming from a dev background, who coming from a tester QA background or a business analyst, someone who wants to switch their career to DevOps and do not know any information about the tools that things that tools and the things that people work upon, this is the video for you. So if you guys, after seeing this video, if you guys have any question, feel free to comment below and we'll address that. So today, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is plan and collaborate. Okay, so this is the first thing that you need to take care whenever you talk about any project or you talk about any product that is used in the software industry these days. So this is the first thing. Okay, so what are the steps under these? We'll talk about that. But then the second one should be your build. So now this build step is the step in which actual artifact is being made. So there are a few other things in that. We'll talk about that. The third one would be your testing and code analysis. Okay, so it is not a hard and fast rule that it should be in this particular order. They can come up to something can goes up, something can go down. This can be done. So third step should be your testing and analysis in the project, and then we talk about the deployment part. Okay, so this is the deployment part where everything goes to the servers and people start using it, let it be inside the company or outside the company. And then in the fifth one we have running. So this running part is collaborated where exactly you are running it. So this running could be on your servers, and this servers can be on your data centers on any cloud like AWS, GCP or Azure, etc. Okay, so this is where you exactly running it. So once the deployment happens, this thing run over somewhere, right? So this is what we are going to explain it, and at the end we are going to do the storage part. Okay, so this is the storage part, and in this storage part you're going to put your data into somewhere, right? Some kind of backup or something, some kind of database or something. Okay, so these are the 6 points that we are going to explain today. Okay, so let me just clear this and let's talk about the first one right now. So let me select the brush and we'll talk about the first one. Okay, so as you already know that the first one is plan and collaborate. So we have three things inside that. So first is your, I'll take about this A, B, let me get rid of this, and C. Okay, so in this app we have your ALM. ALM stands for application lifecycle management. So I'm just going to write the short form of this. This is the one. And then is plan and co-op. In this plan and collaborate you have your something for communication as well. Okay, so people can ask you what do you use for communication. So that is the second thing, and after that you have something for knowledge sharing, right? So knowledge sharing should be something. Now in this application lifecycle management, what you generally have is in which you will maintain the application lifecycle. So application lifecycle management, how generally people do it, they do through Jira. Jira is an Atlassian product, and even in some of the JDs you can find that they ask like whether you know Jira or not. So this is something in which you write down all the stories, you create an epic out of it. Scrum Master generally does that, and then you create an epic out of it, you create a story, a task, or a defect out of it, and then start working on that. So this is what we use for application lifecycle management. Okay, and then when you talk about Azure has its in-house product known as Azure Boards. So it kind of word works like Jira only, but it's an in-house product of Azure. Okay, so this is the first part. Now let us talk about the communication. So a lot of companies ask like, what do you use for the communication part? So a lot of companies use Teams. So Teams is a Microsoft product. In this, and then some of the teams use Slack for messaging, and a lot of teams what they use Google Hangout, so they can talk on Google Hangout as well. And then there is one thing known as Keybase. So this is also one of those things in which a lot of people talk. It is kind of very secure. So these are the communication things that are used inside a company. And when you talk about the knowledge sharing, Confluence is again one of the very famous products. It's a product of Atlassian. Atlassian, I guess, is an Australian company. So it's their product. A lot of people do knowledge sharing over that, and then a few people write their stuff and then put that on GitHub. So this is the first part in which you can say that when you talk about plan and collaboration, this is the thing. Okay, so for the first thing, application lifecycle management, these are the tools, and there can be multiple tools as well. This is the just a basic idea of how things work and inside a company for a project. And then we have communication, these things, and then we have knowledge sharing for these things. So this is the first thing that you need to know in plan and collaborate. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about today is build. Okay, so this is the second thing. So inside build, let me talk about three things again: A and B and then C. So the first part should be your SCM. So SCM stands for source code management. Source code management, and in which all you put your all of your code. So the most famous one are Git based, just as GitHub or GitLab. And then is something known as legacy. This is SVN, also called as subversion. So this is one of the most legacy one. Okay, and then when you talk about Azure, then we have Azure repos for it. And then when you talk about AWS, we have AWS code commit. This is again one of the very famous tools. And then if you talk about Atlassian, they have their own product known as Bitbucket. So these are one of the very famous tools that are used inside any project. Okay, so this is something that we talked about, the source code management part. Now after source code management part, what happens is you do the continuous integration, CI/CD part. Okay, so let's talk about the CI part, which is continuous integration. Okay, I'm not going to write that because that's not much space. So everyone knows that one of the famous tools is Jenkins for your continuous integration part. There is one more product known as TeamCity, and I guess there is Circle CI. A lot of company use, my spelling is wrong, Circle CI is kind of again very famous. And then when you talk about Azure, it goes to Azure DevOps. They have their own system for that known as Azure DevOps or ADO. It used to be called as VSTS before, but then now it is Azure DevOps now. I guess they changed it in 2017 or 18, I guess. You can check it. And then for your AWS, we have our code pipeline. So these are the tools that are used. Okay, so it's not like that you have to use all of them. You can just pick one from each and then you can start using that. Okay, so when you talk about the build part, then what you generally do, if it's a Java based product, then I guess you will use Maven for this. Okay, and then when you talk about AWS, then it's I think it's code build, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I think it's code build. And then when you talk about Azure, you talk about Azure has its own Azure builds. Okay, so these are kind of very famous one on the top that I can remember right now. And then one more very interesting thing is the next point, which is the IDE or the editor. So IDE is your integrated development environment, and there is something known as editor as well. So very famous are Visual Studio Code if you are doing for C# or .NET based code, and then the one of the very famous is Eclipse. It's kind of open source for mostly for Java based products. And then we have one editor. So these two are IDE, so do not get confused. This is IDE and this is also IDE, and this is editor. Okay, so this is VS Code, which is known as Visual Studio Code. Okay, one second, this is Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is an editor. Visual Studio, I guess 2021 is the latest one, I guess. I'm not sure, you can check it online. It's an IDE. So these are the IDE and editor used in build. So again, the 4 point that I'm going to tell you, that if you talk about the build part, you're talking about the SCM, which is source code management. Then you talk about CI, which is your continuous integration. Then you talk about the build part, and then you talk about the IDE or an editor in which the developer or you might write some script, or a developer might write his code. So this is the second thing that you need to understand in any project in a software industry. Okay, so the next point that we're going to talk about is your testing, or you can say code analysis. Okay, so we're going to divide it into two parts. First would be your testing. So in testing, what do you generally use? You can use Karma tests. Okay, if you have a Java based code and there is a web application, then you can use Selenium. Okay, or if you can write JUnit test cases as well. So JUnit is one of the test cases that are used to harden your software. And then you have XUnit if you write a .NET based code, or XUnit you have, I guess, NUnit as well. These are the test cases that you can use. And apart from that, if I can recall correctly, then you have Azure test plans as well, so you can use that. Okay, so these are the things that you can talk about in any kind of interview. On the code analysis part, you have SonarQube. Okay, if you do not know what is SonarQube, just Google it down, or you can just go through one of my videos. I've explained what SonarQube is in the Jenkins automation tutorial. You can look out and you can know how to integrate it and how does it exactly works. It is basically used for your static code analysis testing, and then it tells you about your code smells. It tells you about your technical debt. It tells you about the vulnerabilities in the code. And then one other tool is you have is check marks. SonarQube community version is free, so you can easily download it. If you're a student and do not have a lot of money to spend on it, then you can use community version. It is free of cost. It has an enterprise edition as well, but that comes with a cost. And then checkmarks is paid, so you cannot use much of it. And it is more kind of very secure product, so you can use this as well in your software. And then there is Vera Code, and then there are multiple software as well. Now why I'm telling you this, because if you're a fresher and you do not know a lot of things, how does it work inside an industry, then this video is really good for you, and then you can understand how things work in a software industry, so that even if you are a fresher and you have to join a company, you will someday join an IT organization, it would be easier for you to understand, because that time if you have seen this video and googled about it and heard about it, you won't be a fresher over there in terms of listening these things to the first time. So this has helped you over there. Okay, so that's why these are things that you can know what a lot of companies use in case of testing, code analysis, and you will be very much confident when you enter in the team. Okay, so let's talk about the deploy part. So this is the next point that you need to remember. So in the first part, there will be something, we remove this B and then C. Okay, here we'll talk about the artifact management. There are multiple ways to do that. I'll type mgmt. I don't want to write management over here. And then here you have your deployment. You can use a lot of tool for that deployment. And then you have your IAC over here. IAC is known as infrastructure as a code, or config management. Config management, you can say something like that. Okay, so let's talk about the deployment part first. So in the when you talk about the deployment part, you can use multiple products. So a lot of companies use Jenkins for CD as well. Okay, and then a lot of companies use Octopus deploy for it. You can easily download. I have a automation series created on it, so you can just go and check it out. Octopus Deploy is one of the other tools. And when you talk about Azure, then you can use Azure Pipelines. It is the in-house product for Azure DevOps for Microsoft. And then for AWS, you have Code Deploy. Okay, so AWS Code Deploy is one of the very famous. And then you have GitLab CI as well. So it contains everything. So these are one of the very famous tools that are used inside any software company or software product. Okay, if you talk about the IAC, one of the very famous tools is Terraform. Terraform is platform agnostic, and then you can create infrastructure out of writing scripts in YAML format, and then you can run it. So you can create on AWS, GCP, or Azure. As I told, that it is platform agnostic. Then you have CloudFormation. This CloudFormation is a product of AWS, and then you can create only in AWS. So this is something like that. And then I think you have ARM templates as well. This is basically for Azure. I think ARM full form is Azure Resource Manager, and then I think it's a byproduct, one more product known as Bicep. So it is kind of related. Arms means this arm, and bicep means biceps. So this is kind of wordplay that they did over here. So this is one of other products that you use for IAC or your configuration management. And then artifact management. You need to understand what exactly is your artifact. So in artifact is a library that you have created. It's a product that you have created that is ready to be deployed or run. Okay. So in artifact management, a lot of people use containerization, and when we talk about containerization, we can talk about Docker. So Docker is very one of those most famous tools that you use. So people create their own images and put them on Docker Hub. So this is one of the very famous tool. And then for artifact management, a lot of people use npm as well. And in terms of Azure, we have something known as Azure Artifacts. Okay. And when it comes to AWS, you can put these things on S3 as well, and from there you can make a call and create things out of it. Okay, so this is when you talk about the deployment part. So whenever you go for an interview or you go for some discussion, you can always have this knowledge that this could be the tools that are used inside any product. Okay, so as a product owner, this is really good for you, and if you're a DevOps, then you must know how the system works, and you should know what are the tools that are used in my industry. As a DevOps or as an SRE, my experience that you should know what exactly is being used in the deployment part. All right, so these are the three things that you need to know. Okay, the next thing that you need to know is, okay, let me select a proper brush over here. I think this is fine. The next thing you need to know is run. Where do you run your application? Okay, this is not run. Let me rewrite it as run. Okay, so where do you run your application? So in this case, generally what we do, you can use a cloud or you can use a data center. A data center is kind of like it could be private, it could be anything. So this is something you can use, and while you run, I can just do run and monitoring. Okay, monitoring is very much important. You can check out my videos in which I talk about the monitoring part. So when you talk about monitoring, okay, so let's not talk about monitoring first. Let's talk about the cloud. So one of the very famous public cloud is AWS, which is Amazon Web Service, and has a lot of ground in the world's network. And then there is one more, Azure. Azure is a product of Microsoft, and then GCP is Google Cloud Platform for Google. These are the main public clouds, and then people sometimes have their own private cloud created with the help of these. So I'll just write private cloud. Okay. Now let's talk about the data center. So data center in which you can have the server. So generally what happens is an application can run two ways. Either it can run through an EC2 instance. So this EC2 instance in terms of AWS, when you talk about Azure, it's a VM. When you talk about a GCP, it's a compute engine. Okay, I'll make a separate video on which comparing the services of these three things. Okay, so something needs to be run, and that thing has to run on some kind of VM or some kind of app services. Okay, so we'll not go into that deep. So in the data center, what you have is you have your own VMs over there. Okay, and then in this VMs you deploy the application over here and then support it. So why do people use data center? People use data center because they come with low cost to maintain. Okay, and if you put everything on AWS, then the cost would be higher. So this is how you do it. Let's talk about the monitoring part. Monitoring, there is one very famous tool, Grafana. For basic setup, it's kind of free. So if you're a fresher or just a student who wants to study about Grafana, I'll be creating a series on that. And then you have very famous Prometheus. And then for Azure side, you have App Insights. So it's kind of again very famous, App Insights. My spelling could be wrong over here. You can just Google it out. For AWS, we have your CloudWatch logs, and then there are multiple things as well. Something known as ELK stack. This is Elastic Cache. This is Logstash. This is Kibana. This is Elastic Search. Elastic Search, Logstash, and Kibana. So these are something that you can talk about in run and monitoring. Okay, so people can ask you a question that what tool do you use? So you can talk about the tools that you use, but if you're a fresher, then you need to know these are the tools that are used inside a software industry, and things won't come as a surprise for you when you already know that these are the things that you know. So these are the things that you need to know before moving to or interview, or are you going for some kind of discussion in any sort of IT organization. Okay, so the last part that we are going to talk about today, let me select the proper brush. The last part we are going to talk about today is backup. I think we have talked about this backup slash storage or anything. Okay, so generally when you create some kind of database, you generally use MySQL database or Amazon has its own database. I think I cannot remember the name. Let me remember the name later. MariaDB is kind of similar to MySQL, and then you have MS SQL, and then I think AWS is Aurora. I beg your pardon if I'm wrong over here, but I think it's Aurora, and there are multiple as well for the usage. And then on the storage part, what you generally do, you store when you talk about some data, you can store on S3. You have Glacier as well, depends on the type of data. If you want to use it continuously, then you can use some different kind of plans in S3. Glacier is kind of when you want to keep stuff kind of dormant for a long period of time, because the cost is involved with that. So this is how you do. And then you have some blob objects, blob storage for Azure. You can put your stuff over here, but in terms of database, generally this is something used. And then you can have NoSQL databases as well. Okay, so these are something that you use. So I hope you guys have understood this part, and if there is any question, feel free to comment below. And this is very much useful video for someone who is a fresher, because I have not deep dived into any technology over here. I have just given the knowledge of everything that is kind of used, and I'm 100% sure that these are going to overlap in your technology. Wherever you go inside any sort of company, you will find these tools, and if you're a fresher, it won't come as a surprise for you. All right, so even if you are a business analyst or some QA or automation tester who wants to switch your job into DevOps, and then you do not know what are the tools and what are the things that people work in a software industry, then you can go through this video and understand these are the tools that generally people use. And this is not in very particular order. Okay, so like you can study all about it and use it. Just everything you have to put in your mind before going for an interview or some sort of discussion. Okay, so thanks guys, I hope you have understood this. If there is any issue, feel free to comment below. If I have missed any point, feel free to comment in the comment section, and we will go through that, and we'll definitely reply to any query that you have. All right, so thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next one.